Last thing I want to say, Your Honor, is that I am fully committed to trying to be a better person. I'm going to do as much good as possible and help as many people as I can while I'm incarcerated. I remain fully and wholeheartedly committed to finding a way to somehow make those who love me proud again in some small way. I appreciate each of you talking to me. I appreciate each of you looking at me while I'm talking to you. I can tell that you're listening, and I appreciate it. I'm going to say one more time. I hope you know, I hope you believe that it's heartfelt. And the two things that I hope you take away today are, number one, that I care about you, and number two, that I hate the things that I did, and I am so sorry. And Your Honor, I thank you for letting me address you and for letting me address the victims. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
What if I told you that a man who built his entire reputation on defending the vulnerable was secretly destroying the lives of those who trusted him most? That behind the polished suits and southern charm of one of South Carolina's most powerful attorneys lurked a predator who would steal from a quadriplegic client, from the sons of his own housekeeper, from his childhood best friend, and from people at their absolute lowest point? What if the real horror wasn't just what he stole, but what he was willing to do to keep his secrets buried? Before we dive into this twisted web of deception, if you're fascinated by cases where justice finally catches up to those who believe they're untouchable, then Dark Trail Files is your destination. We don't just report the facts, we uncover the darkness that hides in plain sight. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this case will challenge everything you thought you knew about trust, power, and the American justice system. Now, let's follow the money trail that led to one of the most shocking falls from grace in American legal history. For nearly a century, the Murdaugh name meant something in Hampton County, South Carolina. 3 generations of Murdaugh men served consecutively as the 14th Circuit Solicitor from 1920 to 2006. 86 years of unbroken power. They weren't just lawyers. They were the law itself in South Carolina's Low Country. This was Murdaugh country. Richard Alexander Murdaugh, known as Alec, inherited more than just a law firm. He inherited a legacy of influence that extended into every courtroom, every bank, every corner of local power. The family's personal injury law firm had made them millionaires many times over. Alex seemed to have it all: a beautiful wife, 2 sons, hunting estates, boats, and respect that money alone could never buy. But beneath the surface of this American success story, something dark was growing, and it had been growing for over a decade. Starting around 2009, Alex Murdaugh began orchestrating what would become one of the most extensive attorney theft schemes in American history. The methods were sophisticated, the targets were vulnerable, and the betrayal was absolute. His own paralegal would later reveal in shocking testimony just how calculated these crimes really were. This is what she told the court.
Moving into the latter part of 2020, did you have any particular issue arise with a disbursement to Forge that caught your attention.
I did.
Tell me about that if you would, please.
I was currently working from home. I had surgery on Halloween of 2020, and I was working from home, hadn't come back yet. I was planned to come back to the office the following Monday, and on that day, I believe it was December 15th of 2020, I got a phone call from the accounts payable department. Nicole called me, and she's one of the ladies that cuts the checks and works for Jeannie Seckinger, and she told me that she had just got a disbursement sheet over, that Christy had sent over a disbursement sheet in one of my files. It made no sense. She didn't understand it, and I was confused too, because I was like, why didn't he contact me to do my disbursement? Because I'm kind of protective over my files. If I've worked that file the whole time, I want to finish that file. I want to work the whole process of it. And actually, the disbursement part is my favorite part of the file, because I want to be able to have that, be there when that client gets their money and gets that closure that they deserve. So I thought it was very odd that Christy was drafting a disbursement in one of my files, and
This was the day you were off work.
that's correct. I was working from home, and I still could have been reached, but I wasn't until Nicole reached out to me and told me.
Keep going.
She told me, so I looked, she sends it to me by email or text, I can't remember, and I reviewed it, and it didn't make sense to me either. There was a line on it that said the attorney fees were going, or amount of it was going to Forge, and I didn't understand how that was happening, and I'd never seen him send attorney fees to Forge before, and so I didn't know that that was even a possibility. And so I called the office, and Christy transferred me to Alec, and I spoke to him and asked him about it, and he said, why did Nicole call you? And I said, well, she doesn't know how to write these checks out, because it doesn't make sense to her. She hasn't ever seen a disbursement like this. And he said, I'll take care of it. And so he said, I'll call Nicole, I'll take care of it. And so I remember talking to Nicole later and say, so what did he say? What was the reason behind it? And she said, he said that they can structure their attorney fees, and that's what that check was for.
The schemes operated on multiple levels. First, there was the conspiracy with his banker, Russell Lafitte. From 2011 until October 2021, Murdaugh worked with Lafitte to exploit his own clients. Here's how it worked. Murdaugh would ask Lafitte to serve as personal representative or conservator for his personal injury clients. These were people who had been catastrophically injured, people who needed someone to manage settlement funds because they couldn't do it themselves. Lafitte would collect hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees for this service. But the real scheme was happening behind the scenes. Murdaugh directed his law firm employees to make settlement checks payable to Palmetto State Bank. The checks would be drawn on the firm's trust account with the client's name right there on the memo line. Then Murdaugh had these checks delivered directly to Lafitte, who distributed them for Murdaugh's benefit. Personal loans, personal expenses, cash withdrawals. Think about that for a moment. These checks had the client's name on them. The money belonged to people who had been hurt, who trusted Murdaugh to protect them, and he was systematically stealing it. But that was just the beginning. In September 2015, Murdaugh created what prosecutors would later call his most brazen scheme. He opened a bank account under the name Forge. Not Forge Consulting, the legitimate settlement planning company. Just Forge, a fake account designed to look legitimate enough to fool his own law firm. From May 2017 through July 2021, Murdaugh funneled stolen personal injury settlements through this fake Forge account. He was the only authorized signer. The money went in, and it came right back out to him. His law firm employees had no idea they were sending client money directly into Murdaugh's pocket. The sophistication didn't stop there. Murdaugh had an arsenal of techniques. He drafted disbursement sheets or directed employees to draft them, sending settlement funds to his personal bank accounts without proper disclosure or approval. He claimed funds from the firm's trust account as attorney fees and directed those disbursements to himself. He invented fake annuities and collected attorney fees on products that didn't exist. He created fraudulent expenses that were never incurred, medical expenses that were never paid, construction costs that were never billed. airline expenses for flights that were never taken. He directed other attorneys to pay his fees directly to him instead of routing them through the law firm where they belonged. And in perhaps his most cold-blooded move, he intercepted insurance proceeds intended for beneficiaries and deposited them directly into his personal account. But it was what he did to his own housekeeper's family that would expose the true depths of his depravity.
Well, we saw just a moment ago a confession of judgment where Alex Murdaugh admitted that he owed you $3 million, not get this wrong. Where's the confession of judgment? There it is. $4,305,000. Is that right?
That's the judgment, yes.
Okay. But you hired a lawyer, Eric Bland, very fine lawyer, and he actually sued Mr. Murdaugh's firm and some other folks and got you $6.5 million, right?
Yes, or no, not that I'm aware of.
Pardon me?
Not that I'm aware of. The only thing I'm aware of is the judgment.
So Mr. Bland didn't tell you about the $6.5 million?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure history's not repeating itself here. And so you actually recovered $6.5 million, which would be a couple $1 million more than you would have gotten had you received the money that Alex took, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you've been made more than whole for that loss.
Yes.
$2 million more than you would have gotten had he not taken your money, right?
Okay, yes.
Okay. Now, sort of the last question that I think I have for you, but let me check with my co-counsel before Well, one last question is this. On June 7th, prior to June 8th, had you ever threatened Alex Murdaugh with exposure?
Could you repeat the question again?
Prior to June 8th, 2021, did you ever threaten Alex Murdaugh saying, I know you stole my money, where's my money? You know, I know you got the money. Did you threaten him in any way?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Gloria Satterfield had worked for the Murdaugh family for over 2 decades. She wasn't just their housekeeper. She helped raise Alex's sons. She was, by all accounts, part of the fabric of their family life. In February 2018, Gloria died after what was described as a fall at the Murdaugh home. The family said she tripped over the dogs and fell down the stairs. She spent a month in the hospital before passing away, never able to tell her sons what really happened. At Gloria's funeral, Alex Murdaugh put his arm around her son Tony. He looked him in the eye and made a promise. He would take care of the Satterfield family. He would file a claim against his homeowner's insurance. He told Tony and his brother they could expect up to $100,000. What Tony didn't know was that Murdaugh had already set the trap. He had his friend Corey Fleming act as the Satterfield's attorney without properly informing them. Tony still thought of Alex as his lawyer. For years, Tony checked in with Murdaugh about the case. The response was always the same. They were making progress. It was a difficult case. Everything was moving forward. In reality, Murdaugh had already secured not one, but 2 insurance payouts. $500,000 from one carrier, $3.8 million from another. A total of $4.3 million that belonged to Gloria Satterfield's sons. Alex Murdaugh took every single penny. Tony and his brother didn't learn about the settlement until June 2021, when they read about it in the local media. Even then, when Tony contacted Murdaugh, he was told they were still working on it and hoped to settle by the end of the year. The money had been stolen 3 years earlier. But here's what makes this case truly chilling. The Satterfield theft happened in 2018. The fake Forge account had been operating since 2015. The conspiracy with the banker started in 2011. For over a decade, Murdaugh had been stealing with impunity. So why did it all come crashing down in June 2021? What happened that made the walls finally close in? The answer lies in a single confrontation on the morning of June 7th, 2021. A confrontation that would set in motion a series of events so horrific they would shock the nation. By early 2021, multiple threads were beginning to unravel. There was a wrongful death lawsuit from a boat crash that killed a young woman named Mallory Beach. Paul Murdaugh, Alex's son, had been driving the boat while intoxicated. The case was exposing the family's finances to scrutiny. Then there was the matter of nearly $800,000 that had gone missing, money that would lead to questions from someone Alex couldn't simply charm or manipulate.
First of all, though, just very quickly, you're a lawyer, is that correct?
I am, since 1998.
1998. And describe very quickly your practice for the record.
Actually, since 1995. I've had my own practice since 1998. In the last 15 years, I've done primarily personal injury work, automobile accidents, people that are injured at work, practice type cases, those things.
And where do you normally practice? Where's your home base?
My only office is in Bamberg.
Do a lot of claims work?
That's all I do anymore. For the last 15 years, that's really all I do.
And do you know the defendant?
I do.
And when did you get to know the defendant?
I've known Alex since we were in high school. Bamberg and Hampton, I grew up in Bamberg, and they're only about 30 miles apart, and so I knew of Alex and had been around him some growing up. We had some mutual friends. I was a lot closer to some other guys in Hampton that I grew up playing golf and things like that with, but I would cross paths with Alex. Played on the same baseball team one summer, I think like our seniors in high school or somewhere around high school age. Didn't really keep in touch with him or cross paths with him until we ended up going to law school, and we started law school together at Carolina. 3 years there together at law school and lived together part of the time.
Did y'all become friends?
We did.
Become close friends?
Very close.
Best friends?
He was one of my best friends, yes. And I thought, he was, and I thought he felt the same way about me.
You feel that way now?
I don't know how I feel now, Mr. Waters.
Fair enough.
Chris Wilson wasn't just Alex Murdaugh's colleague. He was his best friend. They had known each other for over 30 years. They hunted together. They fished together. Their families were close. Wilson trusted Murdaugh completely. In early 2021, the two worked together on a personal injury case that generated $2 million in attorney fees. Murdaugh convinced Wilson to write 3 checks totaling $792,000 directly to him personally, rather than to the law firm. He told Wilson it was a special structuring arrangement, that the firm knew about it, that it was to protect the money from the boat crash lawsuit. Wilson trusted his friend of 3 decades and wrote the checks. But then Murdaugh's law firm came to Wilson with questions. Where's that money? It wasn't in the trust account where Murdaugh said it would be. Murdaugh then told Wilson he had made a mistake and asked him to rewrite the check to the law firm. But there was a problem. Murdaugh could only send back $600,000. The other $192,000 was just gone. Wilson ended up paying that missing money out of his own pocket. His best friend had stolen from him, and Wilson had to cover the loss to maintain the integrity of his trust account. On the morning of June 7th, 2021, Gene Seckinger, the chief financial officer of Murdaugh's law firm, confronted him about those missing fees. During that conversation, Murdaugh received a call. His father was going into hospice care. Murdaugh used that call to end the confrontation and left the office. That night, his wife Maggie and son Paul were shot and killed at the family's hunting estate. The murders bought Murdaugh time, sympathy, a reprieve from questions about money. His partners weren't going to harass a grieving husband and father about finances. But the reprieve would only last 3 months. In September 2021, the firm confronted him again. This time, there was no escape. When Chris Wilson received that phone call in September, what he heard would shatter a friendship that had lasted 3 decades. Murdaugh broke down, crying over the phone. He told Wilson he had a drug problem, that he had been addicted to opioids for over 20 years, and that he had been stealing money from clients and from the firm. Wilson asked what phrase Murdaugh used to describe what he had done. Murdaugh replied, "I've messed a lot of people up." Murdaugh would later claim in court that the opioid addiction explained everything, that it gave him the energy to function while destroying his judgment. Listen to what he told the court about those pills.
If I took 30, if I had 30 milligram pills, you figure 100 pills would be 3,000 milligrams.
100?
100.
So you're taking 60 a day or something like that? I mean,
There were days where I took more than that. There were days I took less than that.
and how would you take them during the course of the day? I mean, how many are you taking at one time? How frequent in this time period, let's say January to June?
You know, there's a point in time, and I'm not sure when it was, I think it was well before that, where, and you have to understand this, this is something that I mean, I can still remember the first time I ever took an OxyContin.
Murdaugh, can I ask you to answer my question, and I'll let you explain all you want. And my question was, how many were you taking a day during this time from January to June? Answer that first, please, and if you want to explain, I'm happy to let you do so.
I'm not positive, and here's why. It's because over the years, like as I was saying, the first OxyContin, one OxyContin literally made me sick. And that was when I was transitioning from hydrocodone to oxycodone. And it made me sick because it was a really strong one. And so, you know, one OxyContin pill was like 10 hydrocodone pills. So, but anyway, as I took more and more, and over the years, it just, you know, you build up a tolerance to pain pills. And so what might give me this energy, one of the reasons I became so addicted is, you know, some people talk about pain pills and how they make them lethargic and, you know, where they can't do anything and they feel. Opiates gave me energy. I mean, whatever I was doing, it made it more interesting. You know, it made me want to do it longer. You know, to go on a drive, it made driving. It just at the beginning, it made everything better.
But prosecutors weren't buying it. Federal authorities would later reveal that over $6 million of the stolen money remained completely unaccounted for. Murdaugh claimed it all went to drugs. The math didn't add up. The sophistication of the schemes didn't match someone impaired by addiction. As one federal agent would later describe him, very slimy. Someone who wants to know what you know before he tells you anything. The question of where that $6 million went would become crucial. When FBI agents asked Murdaugh about it, he failed a polygraph examination. Prosecutors accused him of lying about hidden assets and whether another attorney had helped him. The plea agreement he had negotiated, which would have resulted in concurrent sentencing, was suddenly in jeopardy. As investigators dug deeper, the true scale emerged. Over a decade, from approximately 2009 through 2021, Alex Murdaugh stole more than $12 million. The victims weren't random. They were specifically targeted for their vulnerability. A client who became quadriplegic after a crash. A state trooper injured on the job. Children whose parents were killed in a wreck. The deaf son of a woman hospitalized with broken bones, later left paralyzed, and who died while Murdaugh was stealing from his estate. The sons of a family housekeeper who had helped raise Murdaugh's own children. A mother killed in a crash with an intoxicated driver, leaving behind 3 children. Murdaugh told her estate he could only get $30,000. He took $150,000 for himself and his childhood best friend, someone he had hunted and fished with, someone whose father was best friends with Murdaugh's father. 25 victims in total. 11 of them remain unidentified publicly to this day. People whose vulnerability and pain were so profound that their identities are still protected. The financial crimes were staggering. The betrayal was absolute. But the question that haunted investigators and prosecutors was darker still. If Alex Murdaugh was willing to steal from all these people, from his own housekeeper's grieving sons, from his best friend of 30 years, what else was he capable of? And did the timing of those murders on June 7th really just a coincidence? Murdaugh didn't act entirely alone. Russell Lafitte, the banker, was convicted in November 2022 on 6 federal charges. He was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. The judge didn't mince words when sending Murdaugh's co-conspirator behind bars for helping facilitate these thefts.
My heart bleeds for you because I have no doubt of the quality of human being that you are, as reflected by all of the positive comments. But you must suffer the consequences of your actions in these cases that you're standing before me for, and tempering justice with mercy. It's my responsibility to impose a sentence. And there are so many. If I were to spend time here now imposing a sentence on each of these indictments individually, we'd be here for a few hours probably. So suffice it to say, with regard to the Satterfields, and need my clerk here will take notes for me. On count 10, where the exposure is 0 to 5, the sentence is 5 years. I wrote insurance. Is that insurance fraud?
Yes, sir.
That is count number or indictment number.
That's count 11, Your Honor.
Count 11.
Yes, sir.
And the exposure is 0 to 10. The sentence is 10 years. On the breach of trust with the 10-year possibility or exposure, the sentence is 10 years. On the money laundering, where the exposure is 0 to 20 years, the sentence is 10 years. On the 5-year breach of trust, the sentence is 5 years. On the 5-year money laundering, I believe it is 5 years. And on the computer crime, the sentence is 5 years. And each of those will run concurrent with each other. As to the breach of trust involving the Pinckneys, counts 5 and 9, is it?
Yes, sir.
Where the exposure is 5 years, the sentence is 5 years. The 30-day breach of trust, count 6, the sentence is time served. On the conspiracy charge, sentence is 5 years. On the breach of trust, where the exposure is 10 years, the sentence is 10 years. And that sentence will run consecutive to the sentence that you're currently serving. All the sentences otherwise will run concurrent with each other. I'm going to defer any restitution hearings. I believe it's just too convoluted for me to get a true handle on what the state is seeking and what should be ordered, and I tend to think that it's well, I don't want to prejudge whether it's necessary or not, but I'm going to defer any ruling regarding any restitution. I'm not sure whether the state is actually seeking it, whether there's an actual loss, if there is, whether the parties can agree we can have a separate hearing solely dealing with restitution if necessary. As Senator of the court, give you best wishes, Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Corey Fleming, the attorney who helped Murdaugh steal from the Satterfield family, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He was sentenced to nearly 4 years in federal prison. But what about that mysterious other attorney that prosecutors mentioned? Federal investigators hinted that their probe wasn't over. Some sources suggested they were looking at Chris Wilson, though no charges have been filed. The investigation into the full network of Murdaugh's financial crimes continues. The cases moved forward on parallel tracks, state charges and federal charges. In September 2023, Murdaugh pleaded guilty to 22 federal charges. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud. Wire fraud, bank fraud, money laundering. The charges detailed 3 distinct schemes spanning a decade. The federal sentencing guidelines suggested 17.5 to just under 22 years. Prosecutors initially recommended 30 years to run concurrent with his state sentence. But then came the allegation that Murdaugh had failed the polygraph about hidden assets. Prosecutors asked to be released from the plea agreement and wanted him sentenced to the maximum, over 100 years in prison. Before federal sentencing, there was a contentious hearing about jury selection and media coverage that revealed just how much attention this case had attracted.
Your Honor is exactly correct that the law does not presume prejudice. If he wants to file a motion where he cites law, then we can respond, but the law is very clear. It's that you don't presume prejudice, you try to seat a jury. And only through that process can the court then assess whether or not a jury can be seated. We are in 2023. The reality of the media environment is what it is. And unless we're going to say the judicial system just can't function because of publicity, that just leaves nothing left to happen. This is just the reality that we live in. And so we depend on the ability of the system, we depend on the ability of the jury selection process to seat jurors. And that is what should happen, and only if there is an inability to do so can this court then consider whether or not there needs to be some change of venue or some relief or something like that. That is exactly what the process should be. And this is a big county, this is Beaufort County, and fundamentally, just as we rely on lawyers, just as we rely on judges to be objective about what they do, and that includes the defense motion here. Okay? We have an objective duty. We also depend, the system depends on jurors to be objective as well. And to just say, because there's publicity, nothing can be done, just throws the system out and leaves no recourse whatsoever. And what the defense can't do is try to essentially run down the street to the federal authorities and bypass the accountability that needs to happen in state court for a direct assault through use of a state law license on this courtroom, Your Honor, on the other courtrooms of the other counties that I named. The state judiciary needs, the state judicial system needs to answer for this the allegations of this assault. And that's why this is important. That's why this case has priority, and that's why the state seeks to move it forward.
Briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Well, this wasn't his argument a year ago when he called the murder case first. The murder case was indicted after the financial crimes, and it wasn't that important then. Now, all of a sudden, it's the most important thing in the world. I would suggest, Your Honor, that he made a decision to try the murder case first, not the financial crimes. And as a result, we've been put in the position, of where we're at today. In addition to that, I would state for the record, I want this clear, based on that is, Mr. Griffin and my trial schedules in other cases between now and the end of the year, we would be ineffective in preparing for this trial, any trial.
And when the court was ready to set a date for the financial crimes trial, even Murdaugh's demeanor in the courtroom became evidence of his true character.
I understand one of the solutions to massive pretrial publicity is a change of venue. There are 2 cases I want to cite to the court, both of the United States Supreme Court cases. Murphy versus Florida, and the cited, I'm sorry, Shepard versus Maxwell. There are two kinds of pretrial publicity that would indicate a continuance and/or a change of venue is required. Prejudice is presumed from pretrial publicity when pretrial publicity is sufficiently prejudicial and inflammatory, and the prejudicial pretrial publicity saturated the community where the trials were held. They found presumed pretrial publicity in a case much less renowned, much less publicized than this one. And Your Honor, to try this case in less than a year after the verdict came in the other case, don't we need to let it calm down a little bit? Where are you going to get a jury? Mars? I mean, there's nowhere in this state.
Allendale, Orangeburg, Beaufort, Colleton,
Your Honor, and I
Hampton.
appreciate your sense of humor.
It's not a sense of humor. We have many counties where these indictments were issued. I am not presuming that a jury cannot be impaneled. Just as the trial that took place on Colleton County, there was no motion to change venue. And I'm not presuming any prejudice, and the test is not based on speculation. The test is whether or not a jury can be impaneled. You first have to attempt to get a jury according to the law.
What I'm saying is, I think it'd be an exercise of utility. I know this. We've been interviewing jurors, as you know, in the murder trial. There was a juror who on that jury who had been excused, been on the jury panel, was in the previous year, and told other jurors, I want on this trial, I want on this trial. And that, I'm afraid, is what happened on that jury. We got a motion for a new trial after discovered evidence. The Attorney General is going to file their response tomorrow. We believe the Court of Appeals will order a hearing before a circuit court judge to determine whether or not the corporate court tampered with that jury. And that is and so we would go forward with another trial while that matter is pending, while that matter is being litigated?
Probably not in Colleton County.
Well, Your Honor, the idea that somehow something happens in Colleton County doesn't affect what happens in Beaufort County. I mean, this is a national case. I mean, do they not have television in Allendale County?
I don't know.
Do they not have the internet?
I don't know.
Well, what's the hurry? That's the other point. What is the hurry? He's pleading in federal court next Thursday. Every allegation the state has made, the victims will have their day in court. We plead, Mr. Murdaugh indicated he pleads guilty to the state charge, but the state insists on doing them in serial so they get 3 convictions so they get life without parole. A guy who's already serving 2 life sentences without parole. This is just another attempt to get more publicity, to make this another national case. And, Your Honor, I'm offended that the Attorney General is waiting. He's got many other cases that are much older than this, but granted, court TV won't be there for them. This is another effort in creating a national spectacle. Now, Your Honor has some things to say about Mr. Murdaugh and his sentencing. You obviously believe he was guilty of that. You obviously, and the jury found him guilty of that. But I would ask you to put those feelings aside and give us a chance to litigate this jury tampering issue, to allow Mr. Griffin and I to have time, if there is going to be a trial on these, to prepare for those trials, which we won't with our calendar for the fall. And third thing is, why doesn't the Attorney General put some distance between the conviction in the murder case and the trial, if there has to be a trial, on the financial cases?
That smile, that casual demeanor, it stood in stark contrast to the gravity of what he had done. In November 2023, before his federal sentencing, came his state sentencing. This was when the victims would finally get to speak. One by one, they stood before the man who had betrayed them. And one confrontation in particular captured the raw emotion of what Murdaugh had done.
I've been waiting on this day to look in your eyes. I wanted to sit down with you one-on-one when I found out what you did, I just want to know why. Like I said, yo, excuse me. Unlike a lot of these people here, these victims, I got a lot of intimate stuff that I could say. You remember all those wildlife hunts I had for law enforcement? Your entire family was a guest of honor. Mr. Buster, Judge Aldroff, insisted on me taking care of them for the day. You don't know how many brownie points you got in my life from just that. I trusted you with everything. I knew I was gonna break. I knew it.
Mr. Bland, can you reposition his mic so I can understand?
I knew I was gonna break. Excuse me, I knew I was gonna break. But I got some notes here I don't even know if I can go through. Our family got a deep relationship, man. You remember making a comment to me after I found out, after we discussed the possible amount this lawsuit was worth, and you made a comment to me, and you said, don't spend all this money foolishly. Tell me what you did with $20 million that you stole. Part of it being mine. And you know, I'm sitting there crying. I want everybody in the church, I need you to know. I'm not crying because of what he stole from me. I'm crying for what he did to everybody in the suit. These kids, these people dying. I didn't want to come up here and bash you, but I gotta ask you, what kind of animal are you? I can't even go over my notes. I'm not here to be your judge. Ultimately, that belongs to the good Lord and Savior. But may He have mercy on your soul. I didn't want to see you. When I saw you on TV in an orange jumpsuit, it hurt me. Still wasn't mad at you. Was this judicial system put together a system to deal with people that make bad choices? And my friend, you chose to make the choice you made. So I need the judge to know that I am in full favor of the court's recommendation for the 27 years. I can go back to us going to mediation. That you affected my wife. You chose to have Maggie deal with us those 2 days we were in Charleston in mediation. She catered to us hand and foot. You told me where to go and check into my room. We did. From that point, we never drove another foot. Neither did you. Maggie drove us everywhere we went. When all this came about, Paul, and Maggie, I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it. But after sitting here today and hearing some of the devious things that you did to people, these victims here, changed my mind, bro. Once again, I ask you, what kind of animal are you? Boy, I gave you my all. I would do, the money you stole from me, you could have asked me for it and I would have gave it to you if that's how I felt about you and your family. You didn't have to steal it from me, man. And I still, if there's any way possible, you set it up for me to be on your visitation list. I want to sit down with you. I want to look you in your eyes and talk to you when I can really talk to you. We got some intimate things we can talk about.
I would like that.
But why, bro? Why? Such a talent. How talented you are? I don't understand. Mr. Harpoonian, nothing to do with you, but you made a comment earlier about the attorneys trying to sell bobbleheads and cups. Can you represent this man to sell those bobbleheads and cups to repay the victims that he stole from? Thank you.
Jordan Jinks, the childhood friend, asked a question that echoed through the courtroom. "What kind of animal are you?" He told Murdaugh he would have given him the money if he had only asked, that he didn't have to steal, that he couldn't believe someone he had known his whole life could be capable of such devious crimes. Pamela Pinckney, whose quadriplegic son died after Murdaugh stole from them twice, offered something unexpected: forgiveness. But she made clear what the theft had cost her family. Ginger Hadwin, Gloria Satterfield's sister, asked Murdaugh how he could steal millions from her nephews after Gloria had helped raise his sons. "How do you not have a soul?" Angel Gary spoke for her mother Blondell, killed in an ambulance crash. Murdaugh had stolen over $100,000 from her settlement. Despite the betrayal, she too offered forgiveness. For nearly an hour, Alex Murdaugh addressed the court. He rocked back and forth. His arms were shackled to his waist. He asked his victims to trust that he cared about them, acknowledging how hypocritical that sounded. He blamed his opioid addiction. He promised to do good with the rest of his life. The judge, Clifton Newman, who had also presided over the murder trial, responded with words that cut through the courtroom. He said Murdaugh had one of the emptiest souls he had seen in 23 years on the bench, that he was an enigma, that he didn't seem to understand himself. Newman accepted the plea deal: 27 years in state prison for 22 charges involving 18 victims. Under South Carolina law, Murdaugh would have to serve almost 23 years even with good behavior. He would be 76 before possible release. Then came federal court, and despite all the legal maneuvering, one victim was allowed to speak directly to the man who had betrayed his trust.
Last thing I want to say, Your Honor, is that I am fully committed to trying to be a better person. I'm going to do as much good as possible and help as many people as I can while I'm incarcerated. I remain fully and wholeheartedly committed to finding a way to somehow make those who love me proud again in some small way. I appreciate each of you talking to me. I appreciate each of you looking at me while I'm talking to you. I can tell that you're listening, and I appreciate it. I'm going to say one more time, I hope you know, I hope you believe that it is heartfelt. And the two things that I hope you take away today are, number one, that I care about you, and number two, that I hate the things that I did, and I am so sorry. And Your Honor, I thank you for letting me address you and for letting me address the victims. Thank you so much.
Sir.
On April 1st, 2024, federal sentencing arrived. Despite the controversy over the polygraph, despite the government's request to be released from the plea agreement, the judge allowed the sentencing to proceed. But he didn't follow anyone's recommendations. When it came time for Murdaugh to make his final plea to the federal court, his words rang hollow against the weight of evidence.
Mr. Murdaugh, you've heard what Mr. Waters has stated. Do you agree with the statements he has made?
Yes, sir.
And do you wish to withdraw your formally entered plea of not guilty and plead guilty to each and every one of these charges?
I do.
You, your lawyer, and the prosecutor have negotiated a sentence in this matter that's been recited by Mr. Waters. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And where there's a negotiated sentence, either I will accept the plea, guilty plea, and give you the exact sentence that you, your lawyer, and the prosecutor have negotiated, or I will not accept your guilty plea. Do you understand that?
I do, yes, sir.
And would you like for me to accept the guilty plea and impose the negotiated sentence?
Yes, sir, I would.
And because these cases, various counts are venued in various counties, Orangeburg County, Hampton County, Colleton County, Bamberg County, Allendale County, I think that in addition to Beaufort, do you wish to waive venue from those counties to have the case heard here in Beaufort?
I do.
Is there any question in your mind as to whether or not you wish to proceed with this guilty plea?
No, sir, there's no question in my mind.
Do you believe you've had enough time to think about it?
Yes, sir, I do.
Are
It's a
you
long
set?
time to think about it.
I can imagine. Do you believe that you've had effective representation by Mr. Harpootlian and Mr. Griffin?
Absolutely.
Now, this plea agreement includes a provision providing for a waiver of appeal and waiver of filing any post-conviction relief, as well as ordering restitution. You have reviewed those provisions and are fully informed and agree with those provisions.
I am, yes, sir.
Under the Victim's Bill of Rights, the court must ensure that the Victim's Bill of Rights have been complied with. The state is well aware of that, as well as your lawyers. And the victims have the right to be heard prior to the official imposition of any sentence or the official acceptance of a guilty plea. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
And so it's the intent of the court, assuming a factual basis is established by Mr. Waters or Mr. James, that the court will accept this guilty plea contingent upon the Victim's Bill of Rights being satisfied. Therefore, any sentencing will take place at a subsequent hearing, which will be on November 28th at 10 o'clock. Do you understand that?
It'll be when, sir?
November 28th.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Tuesday, I'm sorry.
I understood it wouldn't be today. Yes, sir. I understand that.
All right. And understanding all that has been stated up to this point, how do you plead?
I plead guilty, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. You can be seated, and we'll hear from Mr. Waters.
U.S. District Judge Richard Gergel sentenced Alex Murdaugh to 40 years in federal prison. 10 years, more than prosecutors had asked for. More than double the sentencing guidelines. The judge cited the staggering human toll of the crimes. The targeting of the most vulnerable people. Those who placed all their problems and hopes in Murdaugh, only to be abused and stolen from. Gergel dismissed the addiction defense. He said no truly impaired person could pull off the complexity of these transactions. The crimes were too sophisticated, 2 calculated, 2 sustained over too many years. The sentence would run concurrent with the state sentence, but it was insurance on top of insurance. Along with the 2 consecutive life sentences for the murders of his wife and son, Alex Murdaugh would never walk free again. The court also ordered Murdaugh to pay $8,762,731.88 in restitution to his victims. A forfeiture order for $10,034,377.95 covered his ill-gotten gains. The final sentencing brought an end to this chapter, but not before one more accounting of all he had done.
And I have lived with this case now for over 2 years, and I have 34 days left before active retirement. And after imposing this sentence, your life will continue. I will turn the page and leave you behind. You're quite an enigma, a person that many of us thought we knew. And as I stated earlier, I can only recall you as being a fun-loving, happy person. I've never seen you sad. I've never seen you being anything other than a friendly, caring person. And it's so disappointing to see you again in this setting. I believe the last time we saw each other and you were not in jail was at a conference when you were poolside having a good time. And as it turns out, that was a couple of months after the passing of your wife and son. But you were having a good time, made nothing of it, and then the Labor Day weekend events occurred, and next thing I know, I'm assigned to preside over all of your matters. Not on your matters, but others as well. And we started out with over 100 charges, indictments against various folks, and we've whittled that down to just a handful outstanding. And I'm happy to turn the page and turn, not turn the remnants over to anyone else, but to certainly turn over anything pending against you to someone else. It's been said that these are white-collar offenses. I've never had that distinction. I've never thought of it that way. I've looked at criminal offenses as criminal offenses. You know, 3 property crimes in South Carolina is you can get 10 years in prison. People have gotten 10 years for shoplifting, 3rd offense. I've sent people into retirement for committing criminal offenses over and over and over again. But I've never thought of it as being a white-collar offense. Having had employees do embezzlement, church secretaries stole money, preachers stolen money, many offenses. But I never draw a distinction between a violent crime and other crimes. Certainly the law makes a distinction, and many violent crimes are non-parole offenses. The plea I'm accepting with you, you must serve 85% of the time. The parties have indicated that they are the victims, to the extent that they can be called victims there. That's my preferred term for the group of people who have been preyed upon or victimized. They've all indicated that they would like for the court to accept the negotiated sentence. It is a stern sentence. The question was asked, or what kind of animal are you? You're an enigmatic person. I don't know that you understand yourself. What comes to mind is a young man that I sentenced to death penalty for killing a police officer and setting his body on fire. And though personally I was opposed to capital punishment, he was sentenced to death. And in writing up that sentence report, I concluded that he was heartless. He was just empty. And when I see you and I listen to you and I reflect on all that I've seen since being appointed, assigned to these cases, you come closest to that young man. Being empty, I don't see anything. I tried to reach you at sentencing in the other case. I've listened to you here today, and I don't see anything there. Hopefully something will emerge within your spirit, within your soul. Certainly, being a person of your age and intelligence and experience, you have a lot to offer to the people that you encounter on a daily basis in the institution, and I think it's admirable that you've indicated that you will help them and continue to try to do good by them. You'll certainly have a lot of opportunity to do that. As we look at it, all of us, none of us are perfect. Many of us do things that we shouldn't do. It's just unimaginable to me that you have done some of the things that you've done, and whether it's you or someone you become upon using drugs or through the process of just committing the crimes over and over the period of years. I don't know. I don't even know who I'm speaking to now. But being a person of power and influence, and the question is raised of what type of character do you have? A person who would prey upon folks who are vulnerable and who are of a lower perceived estate than you. How you would prey upon those people who you say you love. And you capitalize on a disparity of what you have versus what they had and what they need and what they desired. In my years, I know of no greater joy as a lawyer that I've had during my 47 years as a lawyer than the joy of having a satisfied client, of delivering good results for a client and experiencing that joy with them. I can think of no greater joy than I've experienced in being able to deliver on behalf of a client. And I'm sure you've experienced that joy as well until you decided that the only joy you're concerned about was your own. I take no joy at all in imposing this sentence, but it is what it is. And you'll have to suffer the consequences of your acts, continue to suffer the consequences, and hopefully some good will come out of you as you move forward.
Where did the $6 million go? Murdaugh claims drugs. Investigators don't believe him. No one has located these funds. Was Chris Wilson or another attorney involved? Federal prosecutors suggested they were still investigating. No additional charges have been filed, but the probe apparently continues. What really happened to Gloria Satterfield? Her death was never reported to the Hampton County coroner as required by law. No autopsy was performed. The death certificate said natural causes, which her family and the coroner later disputed. SLED opened a criminal investigation into her death. That investigation remains open. Did the financial pressure really drive Murdaugh to murder? Prosecutors in the murder trial argued that June 7th was his day of reckoning. His law firm had confronted him that morning. The boat crash lawsuit was exposing his finances. Everything was about to come crashing down. They argued he killed his wife and son to buy time and sympathy, to make himself look like a victim rather than a perpetrator. Murdaugh maintains his innocence in the murders. His attorneys have filed appeals claiming jury tampering by the court clerk who allegedly wanted publicity for a book. The South Carolina Supreme Court agreed to hear that appeal. In May 2025, that clerk was arrested and charged with felony misconduct in office and perjury, potentially strengthening Murdaugh's case for a new trial. How did this happen? How did one attorney steal $12 million over a decade from his own clients while working at a prestigious law firm? The answer lies in a catastrophic failure of oversight. Financial experts who later analyzed the case identified multiple missing controls. No verification required for check payments. No review by anyone else in the finance department. No monthly reconciliation of the trust account with bank statements. No segregation of duties, meaning Murdaugh was the only person making deposits at the bank. No dual verifications or approvals for disbursements. No positive pay system with the bank to catch fraudulent checks. No surprise audits. Combine these failures with Murdaugh's long-term relationships with banks, attorneys, and clients who trusted him, and you have the perfect opportunity for theft. Add an irrationalization. Perhaps Murdaugh felt entitled to client settlement funds because of his skill as an attorney, and you have all three elements of the fraud triangle: pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. But there's another factor: power. The Murdaugh name had meant something in Hampton County for a century. That kind of generational power creates a presumption that certain people are above suspicion, that they don't need to be questioned, that their word is their bond. Alex Murdaugh weaponized that presumption against the people who trusted him most. The Murdaugh dynasty is over. The law firm changed its name. The family's reputation is destroyed. The hunting estates have been sold to pay victims. The dynasty built over a century collapsed in a matter of months. But the impact on the victims continues. 25 people who came to Alex Murdaugh in their darkest hours, seeking help, seeking justice, seeking hope. Instead, they found a predator who saw their vulnerability as an opportunity. Some have found forgiveness. Pamela Pinckney, who lost her son and was robbed twice, told Murdaugh she forgave him from her heart. Tony Satterfield, who watched Murdaugh steal the memory of his mother along with millions of dollars, said he prays for Murdaugh. Others remained shattered by the betrayal. Jordan Jinks, the childhood friend, couldn't reconcile the person he thought he knew with the man capable of such calculated cruelty. The Satterfield sons established Gloria's Gift, an organization to assist families in need in Hampton County during the holidays. They're trying to build something positive from the ashes of their mother's memory and their family's betrayal. This case forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The people we're supposed to trust most, those who hold positions of power and authority, sometimes abuse that trust in ways we can barely comprehend. Alex Murdaugh was a personal injury attorney. His job was to help people who had been hurt, to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, to stand between his clients and the powerful entities that had harmed them. Instead, he became exactly what he was supposed to protect them from. How many attorneys are there like Alex Murdaugh? How many cases go unnoticed because the theft is smaller or the attorney is more careful? How many vulnerable people are being victimized right now by someone they trust completely? The Murdaugh case was only exposed because the walls finally closed in, because a boat crash lawsuit forced scrutiny of finances, because a CFO asked the right questions at the right time, because Chris Wilson trusted his friend enough to write those checks directly to him, which created a trail that led back to a decade of theft. But for every Alex Murdaugh who gets caught, how many others retire wealthy and respected, having stolen from clients over an entire career? Alex Murdaugh is currently 56 years old. He's serving 2 consecutive life sentences for murder, 27 years for state financial crimes, 40 years for federal financial crimes. Even if his murder conviction is overturned on appeal, which legal experts consider unlikely, he will die in prison for his financial crimes alone. The insurance on top of insurance worked. The system that failed to stop him for a decade finally caught him. And justice, delayed though it was, ultimately prevailed. But that justice came too late for 25 victims. Too late for Gloria Satterfield and her sons. Too late for Pamela Pinkney and her son. Too late for Jordan Jinks. Too late for all the others whose names we may never know. The Murdaugh name once opened doors across South Carolina. Now it serves as a warning. No amount of power, no legacy of influence, no dynasty of respect can protect you forever from the consequences of your crimes. Alex Murdaugh stole $12 million. He stole it from people at their lowest moments. He stole it with charm and manipulation and sophisticated schemes. He stole it because he felt entitled to it, because he thought his name and his power would protect him, because he believed he was untouchable. He was wrong. And now he has the rest of his life behind bars to understand just how wrong he was. If this case has shown you anything, it's that evil doesn't always announce itself with a weapon or a threat. Sometimes it arrives in a tailored suit, with a warm handshake and a promise to help. Sometimes it speaks with a southern drawl, and comes from a family everyone respects. Sometimes it's the person you would never suspect, the one everyone trusts completely. That's what makes it so dangerous. That's what makes it so important to share these stories. Because awareness is protection, knowledge is power, and understanding how people like Alex Murdaugh operate is the first step in making sure they can never operate again. This is Dark Trail Files, and we'll continue following the cases that reveal the darkness hiding in plain sight. The trials that expose the truth behind the lies. The stories that demand to be told. Because somewhere out there, another Alex Murdaugh is sitting in an office, looking at a vulnerable client and making a calculation. Somewhere, another victim is trusting someone they shouldn't. Somewhere, another crime is being planned. And we'll be there to follow the trail when it finally comes to light. Stay vigilant. Stay informed. And never forget, trust must be earned, not assumed. No matter how powerful the name. No matter how impressive the reputation. No matter how convincing the smile. Subscribe to Dark Trail Files and join us as we continue to expose the truth that others try to hide. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. And remember, the most dangerous criminals are often the ones who convince you they're on your side. Until next time, stay safe out there. Retriclawed can make mistakes. Please double check responses.